everybody. Welcome back to the Digital Trust 2025 conference for the session 2. Now, I'm Olivier Crochat, the Executive Director of the Center for Digital Trust at EPFL. And I have the privilege to introduce Professor Öykü Isik, the moderator of this session, during which we'll have speakers from various companies that will explain how they have developed trust over time and the challenges of digitalization and how they address that. Öykü is a professor of digital strategy and cybersecurity at IMD. She's passionate about studying the way disruptive technology challenge our society and organizations. Computer scientist by training, Öykü previously held position at Vlerick Business School in Belgium, at the University of North Texas and Istanbul Bigli University. Her current work centers around data privacy in relation to consumer behavior, as well as the role of transparency in building trust for digital technology. Öykü, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Olivier. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. Hello, it's an absolute pleasure to be here, seeing face-to-face you and dear panelists, welcome as well. So today we're talking about digital trust, and it seems to me that we are surrounded by incidents that hint at rather the lack of it. Just this morning, I was reading about how pieces of Brazilian Amazon forest is on sale on Facebook Marketplace, and that Facebook is saying no to taking action to stopping these illegal sales. But also we are, of course, all heard about the whistleblower and how, for instance, research around Instagram and how its negative impact on the psychology of teenagers has been found, but rather not talked about by Facebook. So clearly these are all things that impact our tours. But social media is one thing. But we also do see an overall lack of trust in big tech. We even have a name for it. We call it techlash, right? The negative implications or negative feelings toward big tech. And of course, cybersecurity is at the center of, or rather a big contributor to this lack of trust. You may have heard about the big leak, a data breach of Twitch last week, where a technical glitch was exploited by hackers, and not only the full source code of the platform, but also the income levels of many streamers were published, to the surprise of the followers of these streamers. Also implicating or have implications on trust. But I personally believe the biggest blow may still come from more social challenges around use of digital, such as algorithmic responsibility in more so-called gig economy. You may have heard about Uber being challenged in a legal challenge in UK over its use of real-time facial analytics, and leading to suspension of several drivers' accounts, and there's a legal battle going on. And we know that this facial recognition technology is already problematic, especially from the perspective of recognizing or detecting people of color. We know that several governments, several law enforcement agencies also use this technology, which reduce the trust of citizens, not only towards these applications from government, but also the technology itself. All these little anecdotes seem to be confirmed also by more global studies, studies such as Edelman Trust Barometer, or studies such as European Commission's Eurobarometer that are conducted regularly and frequently seem to hint at a global reducing trust in digital by the consumers. Yet there are several other examples that show that we can and we do trust many other industries around us. We step in our cars, we step in airplanes and elevators without a second thought, thinking and believing that they will just work just fine. And if they don't, there are consequences. So I wonder, are there no consequences when it comes to digital interactions? And we know that there are many industries that have built auditing mechanisms, certification mechanisms around safe engineering practices. And I wonder, can we not build such auditing mechanisms, certification mechanisms around digital engineering that seems to be surrounding us. So how do we tackle this? The purpose of this panel is to turn our gaze to other industries, to other sectors, in an effort to benchmark and see what we can learn from these other organizations. And we have representatives from finance, from luxury industry, from public service and transportation, as well as a not-for-profit for humanitarian service. And all these businesses have had their share of trust building, as well as their own challenges when it comes to trust. So first, I would like to introduce the panelists and then give them about 5 minutes each so that they can make their initial statements. They can all describe us, their industry, their business, how do they conduct business, and how do they build trust in their rather traditional, not digitally native businesses. So let me start by introducing Marie. Marie Nemond is the Group Chief Data Officer at Pictet and Head of Data and Analytics Service. Her current responsibility includes data management, data governance, analytics, and data science. As Group Chief Data Officer, Mary's goal is to empower a successful data strategy that will enable Pictet to derive maximum value from available data and foster a culture of data-driven innovation. Prior to joining Pictet, Mary worked 7 years in management consulting with Oliver Wyman as an associate partner specialized in financial services and organization practices, where she led several C-level projects across the world, including digital transformation, change management, process design, and operations. And then we have Brenda Killen, who is the Director of Governance at Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, where she brings together public, private, and international institutions to save lives and protect the world against the threat of epidemics especially. For the last 18 months, she has helped build and run the governance structures around COVAX, the global initiative to accelerate equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines. An economist by training, Brenda has more than 25 years experience of building trust and good governance in international organizations and alliances. She is a member of the UN Secretary General's Independent Accountability Panel for Every Woman, Every Child, and a director of the Women in Global Health movement. Then we have Klaus. Klaus Tipsmark is the Chief Security Officer of the Richemont Group. He has been with Richemont since March 2017, and before then he worked for Carlsberg Breweries as the Group Chief Security Officer and Chief Information Security Officer. Today he leads the Richemont Group security function and is in charge of physical security, health and environmental safety, cyber resilience, crisis management, business continuity, and security risk management. The scope of his work is the whole value chain, from receiving raw materials to the finished products that are sold either online or in one of the boutiques. Last but not least, we have Marcel Zumbühl, who works for Swiss Post as Chief Information Security Officer and member of the IT board since August 2018, and he is responsible for the information security of the Swiss Post Group. He holds a master's degree in computer science. After studying at the University of Bern, he worked both in Switzerland and abroad for various companies such as Accenture, Swisscom, and Credit Suisse. He lectures at ETH Zurich on risk management and risk communication, and HSLU on CISO organizations. Since 2020, Marcel is co-president of the Information Security Society Switzerland. Welcome all. Thank you very much for being here. We look forward to your comments on digital trust and how you build trust in your organizations. So here I would like to start with maybe you, Brenda, talking about how what trust means in your business, and how have you been building towards building trust, and maybe some of the challenges you have already experienced.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here this morning. So I'm the Director of Governance at Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, as we've just heard. And Gavi is a public-private partnership. It helps vaccinate almost half the world's children against deadly and debilitating infectious diseases. And we do this by creating markets for vaccines. So we use our financial resources to increase volumes, reduce prices, and encourage innovation so that we can find new vaccines. And then we make these available to the poorest countries so that children everywhere can be protected. We're a not-for-profit organisation, and we have international institution status in Switzerland and public charity status in the US. And so we work by bringing different and very diverse groups together and building trust across their different viewpoints so that we can harness what is often a creative tension. Everybody doesn't see eye to eye, but everyone is committed to bringing vaccines to children so that children don't die from preventable diseases. I work with the board, and that includes rich and poor governments, organisations such as the World Health Organization, the World Bank. We have health research institutes and vaccine manufacturers from both the global north and the global south. We have unaffiliated individuals with particular expertise, and we have civil society around the table. So a lot of different viewpoints there, and that means that trust is really important. We work through a combination of the UN parliamentary style procedures and also private sector principles of corporate governance. And we often have to deal with market sensitive information around deals that we must keep protected, or politically sensitive information around the situations that some countries are facing. And we follow a consensus approach to decision making. So for all of those reasons, we really have to have trust. Those people in that room are party to some very important information. And in general, the work that Gavi does relies on trust. We're working with clients who are poor people in poor countries, and they need to trust us because we're asking them to bring their children to be vaccinated. So they need to trust us that what is delivered on the ground is good for them and good for the people who are most precious to them, which is their children. We're also spending taxpayers' money because it's provided through aid budgets. So we have to maintain trust in our processes and our impact. So our operations are informed by evidence. We collect data and we conduct monitoring and evaluation so that we can demonstrate our impact. And we also conduct audits on the ground so that if there's any misuse, this is picked up and it's addressed as soon as possible. And in fact, the high levels of trust in the brand of Gavi was one of the reasons why global leaders last year, when they were looking for a place to host the global response to the COVID-19 pandemic, they chose Gavi to host the COVAX facility. So one of the ways that we maintain trust is that we're highly transparent. And all but the most confidential documents, say, for example, we wouldn't share information on, I don't know, the 360 evaluation of our CEO publicly, but otherwise all but the most confidential board documents are posted online immediately after our meetings so that everyone can see how our decisions are made. Trust has been extremely important during this current crisis. So firstly, we've had the extra challenge of working in lockdown. We don't meet face to face. And also because we've had to engage a whole load of new partners under the COVAX facility. We've had to build new relationships and move to trust-based decision-making in just a few weeks with partners who've never had any relationship with us before. So really, you know, our traditional model, our best practice is to bring people together, to have clear goals, to measure and report on our progress towards these goals, acknowledge our diverse viewpoints, and find ways to build on our different skills. We work with our alliance members in country so that our target population, so the poorest children who may never have had any vaccines, get the protection they need. We rely on this connection with the ground level to ensure that we're aware of the latest needs, that we're responding to those, that we're innovating and changing to meet those changing needs. So it's a partnership model. And of course, a partnership model really relies on trust that's built in person. So just to close there, best practice for us pre-pandemic is and was very much bringing people together at the same time in the same room in order to build trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. How about you, Marcel? At Swiss Post, you are also face-to-face with the public, not just any customer or consumer, but with everyone. What do you think about the role of trust in your organization?
When we look at trust is an image that we have in the back of our minds. It comes with experience of a brand, with interaction with a company. It builds over time, especially in the physical world. When we look at Daniel Kahneman in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, he talks about what you see is all there is. That's how we build trust. That's how we build instinct. What we see is all there is. In a physical world where we operate, that's easy. Where every place, every day in Switzerland, delivering letters, delivering parcels since 1849. So 172 years in this business. That's when we ask people, do you trust Post? They have this image of our women postmen delivering their love letters, they're delivering very secret information for 172 years. And obviously this question gets reduced to who do I know with Swiss Post? How do they operate? Do I trust this guy? Yes, I do. Hence, I trust Post. But we're a multi-industry. We don't only do logistics. We do banking. We're the fourth critical bank in Switzerland with Post Finance. We do transports. We're number 2. And have you ever wondered if our drivers are up to the task when you board a postal car? Usually, people don't. And the newest addition to our industry is communication services. Things like digital health, things like electronic voting for Switzerland that we're proposing, or identities. That's a whole new space that we're going into. How do we translate the trust in a brand such as Swiss Post, whose brand's been built in the physical world, to the digital world? Is by giving the digital world a face, by making this virtual, non-visible world of the digital space actually visible. We are the third. We're a quite humble organization. We hardly ever talk about us. So that is something we have to overcome. We're 65,000 people in Switzerland, delivering public service. We're owned by the state, but we're not working on taxpayers' money. We do our own money from the market, every franc. And we're also an IT company. We have 1,700 people in the IT department. It's one of the largest IT departments in Switzerland working for our organization. And in this, we have 120 specialists for security. And we thought if we want to open these digital applications or this digital world, we have to share it with the public. And our going forward is the approach of participative security. We work with communities both inside, but also outside. We've opened our online services to hackers. We don't want to wait until one of the attacks hits us. We want to know if there's any critical vulnerability in a system. We want to be the first ones to know. That's how we have pioneered in public bug bounty as one of the first companies in Switzerland, meaning that we propose our online systems to ethical hackers around the globe. They can file us if they find any vulnerabilities. We look at it. We pay for vulnerabilities depending on the grade, and together with these ethical hackers, we fix them. That's how we do with normal online services. That's also how we do with crucial services such as the electronic voting system for Switzerland. We want to make sure that the people can understand what is behind the screen, what is in the black box. We open this, we open the box for people to participate, because at the end of the day, it's our data and it's our shared responsibility, and that's the way we go. Because remember, what you see is all there is.
Thank you very much. And how about you, Marie? You also take care of people's finances, which would be considered to be a very sensitive data. So I can imagine trust playing a key role.
Clearly, actually. So I'm from Pictet, and Pictet represents a sub-segment of the financial industry. Pictet is an asset manager and also a wealth manager, meaning that our clients are high net worth individuals on the wealth management side, and they trust us with their money, actually. So what they want at the end with us is really that we can ensure the money will be still there for the next generation. Their company will continue in the future. So it's really a part of the finance where you need to be a financial partner in a family life, in a company life, and you have to really think long-term view. On the asset management side, this is also the same story because our clients are pension funds and also sovereign funds, meaning that behind those funds, it's retirement money. It's also money for the future development of a country. So again, long-term view, and again, really to find a partner that you can trust for developing that money, and be sure the money will be there when you need it. So actually, as you know, the financial services on the trust part was very, very challenged, especially after the global financial crisis on 2008. So how do you manage that? Meaning how you can trust a financial partner with your finance after what we saw during the crisis. And here I have to say, in my industry, we are really helped by the regulation, because then the government and all the regulator took the topic really seriously. But also thanks to the DNA of our bank, actually, because Pictet is a very, very old bank. It was created in the 19th century and today is 216 years old. And it's also very special on the trust part because it's a company created by Swiss family in the 90s. And today it's still a partnership, meaning that we don't have external shareholders at the board. And we still have heirs from the funding families at the board. So the long-term view and the trust within the people is still there in the mindset of the company. And I think today, especially in the finance industry, it's something really key, because finance is becoming more and more sophisticated. The investment side is really driven by data and by digital. As you see, the new assets, you can trade the speed of the industry, the speed of the market. So the digital part is really there. And on the other hand, to be able to trust your financial partner, you need to have human people who really believe on what they do, actually. So I think this is how you can build trust in the financial industry today, is to have really a long-term view investment, strong belief in investment, and strong partnership with your clients. So this is one side, but on the other side, you also have to provide to your clients trustful technologies, because you have to be really modern. And the new side of investment is really quantitative side. So the data science is really changing the game. And here, from a trust perspective, and from what my team do on a day-to-day basis, here we really have two parts on our trust strategy. The first one is really what we call the defensive part of the trust strategy, meaning that, as we were mentioning in the previous panel, we have cyber attacks every day. And especially when you are a bank, your worst fear is the data leakage. And all the Panama, Pandora paper, every day your clients come to you saying, okay, what's happening? What's about my client, my private data? So you have to really protect that part. And also protect from all the operational aspects and the disaster recovery. Because on the market, if your system is broke because of a malware or something, then you can lose a lot of money because you're not on the market at the right time. So you really need to protect that and make sure that your client data are safe, but also that your operational system are safe. And on the other hand, there is what we call the offensive part of the trust strategy, meaning that we need to have trust in our data, because we need to find the best algorithm for clients to do the best investment. And we need to be sure that we use the right data to that. And in the data world, there are a lot of alternative data, a lot of market data and competitors that provide different views of the data. So how can you make sure your investment team use the right information at the right time with the right quality and at the right speed, meaning that if they need real time, you need to provide real time. If they need historic data, you need to be sure that they come from the right sources. And here, this is another challenge, how you do that. And one answer is mostly through the governance and all the metadata you can put to describe the data you are using. And also be sure that regulation is embedded with that. So a lot of challenge in our side as well.
Thank you, Marie. And how about you, Klaus? I guess in being in the luxury industry also, trust probably is one of the key assets of the business.
Thank you for the good question. Yes, for sure. I think it's important. I was thinking about how to start this introduction because Richemont, when I was contacted 5 years ago, I didn't know what Richemont was. I had absolutely no idea. I'm from Denmark, so I'm not from Switzerland. So in Switzerland, I am sure that everyone knows Richemont, more or less. Then I started looking into this and I experienced that back in 1746 or something like this, someone started making watches up in the mountains here. And if you look in our portfolio today, we have actually 26 different maisons or brands. And the oldest one started back in 1746 or something like this. And the last one was created just 2 years ago. And if you're looking into a normal, let's say, retail luxury industry, it's most brick and mortar, right? You go into a boutique here in Geneva, or you have a good experience, hopefully, and then you have trust in when you go in from a security perspective that you can go in there, you could be in privacy, you can do what you need to do, you can trade, and you can say, okay, nice products, or you. So that's the brick and mortar side, and that's how it all started. And I think when talking about trust from this aspect, very social, physically, interaction with the clients, talking about the products and so on, built a lot of trust and relationship. When we then move a little bit further in history, today we also have different online platforms, online distributors. We have joint ventures with Alibaba in China. We do have Yoox, which is an online platform like Amazon, just for luxury goods. Watches and Wonder, pre-used, pre-loved watches, which are reselling. So if you look at the history of Richemont now, we try to say on the digital side, we need to move from brick and mortar only, where we have building all the trust and relationship with our clients, now into the digital space, so to speak. And the important part here is the learning is also the word new retail, because it means it's a mixture of everything. So where we really want to make sure that our clients, they can see that we protect personal data, because what you are saying, Marie, about the family life and about the client themselves, some of our clients say we know quite a lot about them because there's a trust between the sales associate and the client coming into a boutique, which is super important because they spend quite a lot of money. How do we transfer that into digital? If we go into, let's say, go back to January last year, where we all talk about the COVID and the crisis and what happened. Just bear in mind that back then, 98% of all our point of sales, all our boutiques, we have about 1,200 plus wholesalers, was closed. And how do you deal with that if you have not prepared yourself in the digital area? And we were lucky that our, let's say, our board decided already back in 2015 to invest in the platforms and the digital side. So we were a little bit prepared to say, okay, how do we transfer the physical part into the digital part? But I have to say that the acceleration since the last 2 years has been amazing. And I'm still amazed when I am very humble about this, because when you see that a client go online and spend maybe $1 million online, buying one item, have never been in a boutique. Would I do that? I would do it in our company because I'm full of trust, but still I'm amazed and very humble about the people actually have this trust to us. I truly believe that the interaction and the split between doing this in the physical part and have those close and social relationship combined with the digital part and make it available for the clients also online, where we have the full support of maybe Post, maybe some of the competitors to actually make sure that the parcel is where it should be at the right time. So it is a transformation at the moment, and it's super interesting to go in also to work with artificial intelligence and with machine learning. We have done that for the last 2-3 years, not only in the security space or in the cyberspace, where we have developed our own machine learning platforms to try to understand the security cyber aspects of this, but also now into the, let's say, delivery part and the product part to make sure that we have the right product prediction, we have the right product at the right place in the right boutique, so it's available for our clients. So it's a mixture, and I truly believe that this mixture of both is super important, because if you want to go in the luxury industry, you would like to have a really good experience. And the experience also online has to be very nice, otherwise you are not coming back. So it's a combination of the customer service. It's a combination of make things available online, making sure that there's a good experience, there's a need for speed, and also combine the things with the digital environment. So our flagship stores in the future, truly believe tomorrow, will be a combination of the two, where you go in to have the physical experience combined with the digital experience. We are already introducing this as we speak. So when we look into the company as such, we have, as mentioned by you, we have raw materials coming in. We have using recycled gold from our gold manufacturing sites in Switzerland, and we sell products on Fifth Avenue in New York. And we have everything in between. So it means that it's on the digital side, having the client in the center of all this. We are not talking about route to market anymore. We are talking about route to client. And all this is about to make sure that the client have the trust when they go online or go into a boutique, they are secure. And what they get is the right thing. It's not a fake, it's not counterfeited, and it's there on time. So it's a super interesting journey, which we're on. And I am very humble and pleased first to be here at the panel, but also to be in the company and be part of that journey.
Thank you, Klaus. And thank you all of you. You all talked about your own organizations and also started already discussing how that's kind of translating into digital, right? And most organizations are going through digital transformation at different stages. And we talk about the potential value with this technology. But of course, we also know that the very same technology can work against us, right? We can also see that's being used by threat actors. Marcel, you talked about how you are trying to be proactive and opening your systems, your technologies to observe vulnerabilities early on, right? So my question is twofold. What do you think about this kind of tension that these very same technologies that you are using to create trust and value for customers can also be used by threat actors and create cybersecurity challenges? And the second part to the question is, have you observed any change in your customers or partners' expectations, their behavior when it comes to trusting the business or their demands from you? How do you see this dual role of technology? What do you think, Brenda?
Thank you. Good question, and something we're all struggling with. I mean, obviously, for my role, because I'm the secretary to the board, the director of governance, we had to switch to going from in-person meetings to bringing people together virtually. Thankfully, and I have my predecessor to thank for this, all our statutes, all our charters allowed for this, so that we had processes to do things digitally and to have meetings by telephone or online. So from that point of view, it was quite smooth. But it's just been much more difficult to build trust in the digital world. So in the past, we'd have had somebody who was a member of our board, and in a way we were a family. We relied on them to persuade the rest of their organisation that they needed to move out of their comfort zone. Now we can have any number of people on calls, and there's just not the same level of connection. So added to that, it can be 3 a.m. for somebody on the call, and they may be in their front room or their bedroom, you just don't know. So we've had to do a lot of work behind the scenes, person to person, and I find it ironic that the phone somehow works really well. People are used to the phone, and there isn't that cognitive dissonance of looking at somebody on a television set while you talk to them. So we find that we can do business, we can sign agreements, things can work, we can track, the ability to track the consignments, the vaccines going to countries to make sure they're not being misused. But, simple things like I can't register our vice chair. She's based in Australia. Normally she would have been here for a meeting. It's taken forever to find notaries that will verify somebody's identity and somebody's signature by Zoom. We're still in the process. It may get thrown back at us. It's just interesting how there's these points in the chain that don't allow you to work digitally. Turning to COVAX and the COVID passports and recognising vaccines and clearing them very quickly, that's all worked very impressively. But we found that even though we're all connected digitally, and the World Health Organization is a universal membership organization, so when they approve a vaccine, everyone's approved it, countries then impose these false national limits in the digital world so that certain vaccines aren't recognized in certain countries. That creates challenges for particularly people from poor countries being able to travel. It's seen as vaccine discrimination. And for us, operating in this digital world where in a physical world, it might be easier for people to recognize the different elements of what's happening, there's a risk that our reputation and trust in us is damaged because things are happening that are beyond our control. Whether rich countries are holding vaccines or whether certain vaccines are not recognised by certain countries. They're beyond our control, but if we're seen in this lump of everything to do with vaccines and COVID-19, it can affect us and then might also affect our core business, which has always been very focused and very highly trusted. We've certainly had to really ramp up our defences against cyber attacks. That's been one of the main risks that has been brought to our Audit and Finance Committee. And we're seeing a lot more interest in us from people who are anti-vaxxers, who may not have been interested in the past because they weren't focusing on childhood vaccines going to poor countries. So it's quite demoralising that the digital tools can help us continue to do business, but we still have to maintain trust that we're basing things on evidence. We are collecting data. We provide figures to say, who's been vaccinated, what side effects we might be seeing, whether booster shots are recommended or not. That has to be really thoroughly grounded on evidence, but the misinformation gets there first. It's demoralising to see how the tools are used to bring some of this information to groups who might not have paid any attention to it in the past. So, and anyway, there are people who they're just annoyed with COVID, they're annoyed with the lockdown, they don't want to wear a mask, and somehow we might get lumped into that big online world of people who are working with the COVID vaccine. Just to say we can't abandon our principles. We have to make sure that we are basing things on trust, that we're following legitimate decision making. That and one of our mantras is that what we do with COVAX, that there's clear blue water between that and the core mission, which is poor children in poor countries, and it's existing vaccines. It's bringing good health to them. But communication has been really important to make sure we're on the front foot with giving out news about what's happening, that we make sure that decision makers have the full picture, and we're honest about where there are failures and what might be possible to try and tackle those, so that and recognise it's a partnership, because there's you have to be careful that you don't end up being the fall guy for something that might be happening elsewhere. Let's stick together and keep this moving. I mean, it's ironic that I think we actually spend less time in meetings now than we did before, because a physical meeting would be, you may meet very infrequently, but you would spend 8 hours in one room, whereas there's a limit to how long you can keep people on a Zoom call. But that personal touch has become very, very important to follow up. As I say, the phone stayed the same. It still works in COVID times. And you know, have to find other ways to maintain trust, and then, you know, really spend a lot on protecting ourselves from hackers and from the misinformation campaigns.
Thank you. I think the examples you shared greatly illustrate the benefits of switching to digital mode, as well as the challenges that come with it, and also the time that we've been going through. And we also all heard the World Health Organization being the subject to phishing scams, right? As if it's coming from World Health Organization, suddenly talking about, you have this organization suddenly talking about also cybersecurity, which clearly indicated the increased attention, like you were saying.
Yeah, I forgot to say that we found a fake website in Australia pretending to be COVAX and offering vaccines to the general public. You know, something that would have never happened before, because we were only really operating in poor countries.
Thank you, Brenda. Was there a fake website of Swiss Post?
We have 150 fake websites every month.
Wow.
So, and these are attacks against our customers, and you see the attacks. So when you get an SMS or an email saying your parcel's been hauled at customs and you have to pay X, Y, and by the way, give us our credit card, your credit card. But if there's any email or any SMS that says Post needs your credit card, don't reply to it. Send it to us. It's not Post, it's somebody else. But that happens on a daily basis. Security incidents are not the end of the world. And risk communication is extremely important. In fact, when security incidents happens, that's when you can build trust. If you're open, if you're transparent to your customers and let your customers be the first ones to learn about an incident, that's how you build trust. Because trust is not built just in every day. Trust is built when things happen. And that's, I mean, provocatively, it's a chance. A security incident can be a chance. And we need to understand that security incidents are not the end of the reputation. But actually a chance to build reputation on how do we cope with it, how do we reach out to customers, to the public, to our employees, and how we get back to business when a security incident happens.
Thank you. But most organizations don't think as such, right? The fact that security incidents are so common, so I completely agree with you. How you manage decides your reputation, not the fact that you have been attacked, right? But most organizations don't communicate.
Let's take another industry, another example. Take the airline industry, where we used to every incident on an airplane being reported, right? If all the airlines that had an engine that burned or shut down during an overseas flight were driven out of business by this incident, there would be no planes flying. So we learned to understand that incidents happen. Look at all the industries. Look at all the companies in Switzerland that's been attacked, been ransomed. Right? There's big names. They're still there. It's how they cope with the incident. Remember, there's no space under the rock. Despite it's better you communicate than somebody else does. It's the professionality on how you do. Right?
All right. Thank you. Marie, how about you? You were also talking about the increased number of cyber attacks.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe to go back to your question, I think we have a lot of cyber attack, but regarding the finance industry, we are not surprised about that because, my personal conviction is that wherever you have money, actually you have attacks, and it's just a new way of doing it. But when we invented the paper money, some people took the same machine to create fake. So I think today, this is the same challenge for the industry, is how you hire the best talents, actually. And how do you make sure that you have the best technology, the best talents, and to be sure that you can compete with the malware and yeah, how you can build trust. Because I think one challenge we face in our industry, that because of the lack of trust, some people can see the data leakage and the cyber attack as a good thing. It's not like in the medicine part or with the vaccine, or it's like, okay, we attack a bank, so it's like we are Robin Hood, and it's difficult actually to make people understand that actually everyone is losing from that. So I think here for us, it's the challenge how to attract the best people, the best technology, for sure. And on the customer side, actually, what we see today, it's a real change. That actually today, a customer really want to be more involved and have more information on what's happening, and especially in the investment side, because they used to say, okay, this is the mandate for you to manage or assets and everything, and then you have regular meeting with them and explaining the investment strategy. Today, they really want to do exactly what you put in their portfolios. And at the asset level, they want to understand what company you invest in. And they want to know if that company as a cyber policy, they want to know if that company invests in green, at the green strategy on ESG, for instance, the environmental, social, and government parts. They want to know if you sit at the board of the company you invest in. So they expect from their financial partner to be really more invested in what they do, that you track that. And from a data perspective, it's a rich challenge, meaning that you need to be more granular in the information you give, and you need to follow things in a different way. So yeah, I think they are really, the clients are really more involved, and especially also on the institutional clients. Today, when they want to contract with you, they really ask you, what are your policy for the cybersecurity? What did you put in place? What are the processes in place? So they really do their due diligence, and they really need to be sure that you have everything in place.
Thank you. So increasing expectations from your customers' perspective on cybersecurity measures that you are taking, right?
Yeah, and involvement for sure, and control.
And do you see the same level of engagement?
Yes and no. It depends where we are. And I think important part here, back to your question, I think there's a few things which I think is super important when we're talking about trust here, and how we do it when we want to work with new technologies, we want to introduce new things, or maybe we are giving our data to a third party which are working for us and so on. So for sure, the security embedded by design from the very beginning is really important, that people understand that, okay, let's make sure that what we do from a blueprint design, whatever we do, we embed security by design from the very beginning. It's cheaper, it's faster, and it gives trust. And when we go into the third-party risk, we see a lot of the supply chain attacks coming. We also have a lot of attacks like everyone else around in the panel here. The third-party risk is super critical for a couple of reasons. Firstly, if they are hosting our critical data, we need to make sure that they live up to all the standards and cybersecurity standards and so on, and we have a process for this. So we actually go out and do a different level of testing and so on to make sure before they are allowed to host our data, they actually live up to certain standards that we set for them. It's also part of our procurement process and so on. Again, to build trust and make sure that if they are hosting our data, they do it in a secure way. If we look into the other part of trust, we go outside. Let me take one more point here, because we can build all this up talking about the technology and security by design and so on, but we haven't touched on a very important point here, namely the other part of the firewall, the human firewall. I have to say that the human firewall is super important, that everyone in the company understand that they actually play a role. So you are only 2 clicks away from put the company on risk. And we can put all the processes and all the technologies we do have in our toolboxes in place, and it's working. And we have all the legislation, we have compliance, whatever. But if we have people who don't understand that they are part of the human firewall to protect our business and thereby also create trust for our clients, then we will have a challenge. When we go into the more online market and the platforms, we see, let's start, for instance, in China, that there was Theodora in the previous panel talked about the privacy laws coming, and it's clear that all the privacy laws coming also, let's say, give challenges to a company like ours, because we have a lot of, let's say, business in China. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we do have a joint venture with Alibaba in China. So how do we build the trust and the relationship between the new generation set coming, which would like to go online, access to data, access to product, availability now on their mobile devices. So here it's about test and learn. So basically what we do here, we take people in, we talk to them, we interview them. What is your expectations? What is your look and feel and so on? And we try then to build security in by design and work with the third party, so to do the third party risk management on top of this. So it's a combination on where we are, which generations we work with, and actually also the maturity level of the market and the company where we operate. So there's not one size fits all. I think it's super, super important that we are flexible in our approach and try to be, as now there's a buzzword, as agile as possible. To make sure that we, with the right speed, we can deliver the needs for our clients and for the business. Because we are also obviously working with all the banks for payment systems and so on. And here we also need to be compliant with PCI, whatever it is. And we have, let's say, a very high standard on the cybersecurity area, but also on the compliance side. Is everything perfect? No, it's not, but we try to do our best, also have the best talents, and invest quite a lot of money in this. And I have the pleasure to report to the board every 3 months, where cyber is one of the big topics. I have 2.5 hours with the board, and there are specialists on the board specifically in the cyber area to address those questions and ask questions about what is your strategy, what is your challenges, where is it you want to go, and so on. So they are not only interested, they are really interested, and it's super important for our board and our owner. So that shows the commitment also to invest in this and make sure that we have the right people, process, and technology on board. So we are on the journey. We are not finished yet. I don't think we ever will finish this journey, but that's the beauty of working with this. So let that be my closing part of that one.
Maybe just to complete what Klaus just said, I think what you say is a really important change. Actually, that I think with the technology and the digital, what changed from a people trust perspective in our company is that now we think that the threat could be inside the company. We used to think that the threat was outside the company, but now even in the way we think about designing our IT systems and firewalls and our Chinese wall, it's like we think that maybe there is someone who could do something wrong within our employees. And I think this is what digital changed actually. Before, when we think about trust and how we were protecting our banking system and everything, we were, okay, the threat is outside. But now the human side, we think that everyone could be corrupted by the technology. I mean, consciously, but maybe also because sometimes just because the hackers are super good just to imitate someone and to take identity for someone else. So it's like the trust among the employee as well, and the way you think about your own people has changed.
I think people are a chance as a security factor as well. It's important that we see our employees as contributors to security, not as a risk factor, because otherwise we end up in the paradox of automation, right? We hand everything over to machines and say the machines protect us. But if the machine can't protect, it's the human's fault that they haven't observed that the machine actually didn't do what it should do. So we take away the control of humans over the machine. We say we hand it over to the machine, but if it goes wrong, we blame the humans. So we have to think about educating and enabling humans first, and make sure that our employees are a security factor in the equation.
Actually, just adding to that chain, we had one moment where it just became so difficult to follow all the security as patches were being put on the system. The system is now much smoother, but where there was an emergency need to gear things up, and actually we found that people inside were being quite clever about finding ways around the security. But I mean, in a way, that illustrates where the rest of the problems are. But it showed that you have to work with the staff because they're your first line of defence. And if you make it so difficult for them to do their jobs and observe security, then they're going to ignore the security first.
Thank you, and I'm also want to turn to our audience for questions. But before that, can I ask for your input on what the role of governments and regulations should be? Because several of you also talked about data protection regulations. Now we have AI regulations, also in China, new AI regulations. We talk about technology, and most of the technology, digital revolution we talk about is global. But the norms that impact trust building and regulations are local, right? So there's an impact of the regulatory, let's say, constraints on how people look at technology. So what should be the role of regulations in your opinion?
Very good question. Thank you for that. Let me start. I think the role should be like we have the GDPR, we have the China cybersecurity law, privacy laws in Korea and so on, and now the new personal information protection law in China. I think I will truly believe that the law should be the framework, and the law should set the kind of boundaries and set out the framework to say, okay, guys, this is what you can do and cannot do. Will it always be an advantage for a business like different businesses? No, it will make it more complicated for us. However, it will give us the opportunity to say, okay, at least we need to be compliant with this. And it gives us the opportunity, for instance, for the third-party risk I said before, said you need to live up to those standards, where you host the data, what you do with your data, and so on. Again, it will create trust back into our business, but also create trust to our clients. Regulation is good. Over regulation, maybe not so good. I think the balance here is difficult to find. What I will foresee will happen in tomorrow is that there will be more and more privacy laws coming, and there will be more and more demand for people, for our clients, that the privacy is super important. And the governmental issue and part of this will bring, let's say, the need for us to rethink the way we have built our infrastructure and the way we are dealing with data. I'm pretty sure about that. It will not be stopping us, but it will be, we need to rethink the way we are doing things today. And we are already in a process. However, we are not there yet.
So as a regulation, setting up the minimal standards, but if I can take up what you said, it should be coherent and there shouldn't be over-regulation. Not that we end up just doing reports, but actually doing security still.
I mean, just coming in there, because obviously government regulation is key in health. I mean, classic market failure where the patient doesn't have the knowledge. So setting standards, absolutely key in vaccines as well. And, you know, it's important that the government regulation keeps up to date with the way we're working. And I gave examples already, you know, with the sort of much older profession notaries and trying to work in a digital world. But the importance of you know, recognizing that we're all connected and recognizing that. I remember from when I worked at the OECD and the analysis that was done there were always questions about what's the best way to provide health through the private sector or through the public sector. And the findings were all that the vehicle through which it was delivered mattered far less than the standard of government regulation, and that the government must set the quality standards, set the outcomes with their citizens' rights and needs in mind. And if that's in place, then there is, the private sector will find a way to deliver in the most, efficient way so they can make a profit, or whichever way you choose. But that regulation, which reflects what people need, has to be in place. And I think that may be something that's missing at the moment because the regulations have not caught up with the challenges we're facing.
In the financial industry as well, I think the regulation had a huge role to play, especially from a data storage perspective, because what we see at the moment is that as we're mentioning, the China and the United States now are far away from the rest of Europe in terms of technology, especially when we talk about the cloud and all the storage data. And today, a lot of regulators are thinking about we should keep the data center and our data in Europe and in our country. And I think this is something really important. But it's also a really difficult question to address as a regulator because it's really technological and how the law can compete with all the complexity of the systems behind. But I think this is where today we rely a lot on especially on the software side, on those Chinese and American providers. So I think here the regulator has to really think about the roots of the freedom in Europe and the privacy of our data and everything. And I think this is something really important in our culture and in the way we think about doing the business. Because today the gap between the technology knowledge and is so huge. And I think we cannot compete with that. So it's important that we protect from a storage perspective, so some elements we have.
Thank you. Maybe it's a good time to turn to our audience and see if there are any questions that you would like to raise.
Hello, I'm Mariana. I'm a student at the Graduate Institute. I'm doing my master's. And my question is to Richemont. I saw that you are doing an Aura consumption with consortium with Prada, LVMH. And do you think that is giving trust to your customers, like with this technology of transparency and traceability with blockchain?
Thank you for that question. I was just waiting for that. No, it's a really good question. And I have to say that blockchain technology, as mentioned by Martin this morning, is not new. However, in the luxury industry, we went into this partnership that you just mentioned in your question with the purpose of actually try to do a few things. It was firstly to create trust, but also you also need to think about the brand equity. So meaning that if you are into a certain brand, you are really want to be unique as a brand, and the uniqueness and the history of the product you're going and buying with using blockchain technology gives you actually access into the history if you buy a vintage watch or if you buy a new item and you bring in the blockchain technology as we have done together with this Aura project, and we started with one of our watch brands. Meaning that if you are the owner of the watch, you get access directly to the history of the watch. You can transfer it to your kids, the ownership, and so on. So the feedback we have received from this, let's say, first part of the blockchain part for our products has been super positive. It is also coming back when we talk to when we do the survey about it. They're saying, hey, it's nice to know the history about the product, and we trust in the identity of the product. So to your question, yes, I believe that this in the future, but not now. It's a small scale, but in the future, it will be part of creating trust into our products and the history of the product.
I have an online question. It came fairly early, so I think it was in response to your opening remarks, Öykü, but maybe it resonates for the others as well. So the question is from Mike Nelson. Isn't part of the issue expectations? We trust the paper industry to give us a cheap, easy way to write letters, diaries, or magazines. We don't expect it to prevent ransom notes. Is it logical to expect social media companies to protect our privacy, monitor every message, test every product sold on their platforms, prevent bullying messages, and save the rainforest, and offer a free service that is never offline? He's with the Carnegie Endowment, not an internet company. But if you can maybe take a shot, and if that resonates with others, that what are reasonable expectations for online services or for your services, that and what aren't.
So I would think that that's about setting this stage and setting limits, right? Expectations. So this actually comes down to one of the questions that I also had in mind. How do we involve consumer in this equation more, right? I guess that would come to what can we expect, what should and should not we expect from these digital services. And there, I guess the transparency plays a role, right? What do we, in this saying this, I think about all the data exchanges that seem to be creating some of the problem, and that goes without us seeing and observing. You talked about third parties, right? Sometimes we do give our consent, which makes the data exchange compliant and legal, but we don't always see where that data later on goes on to. And I think that does feed into this big question mark from the consumers and to say, what else is going on that I'm not aware of, and what's in it for me in this data exchange, and what's in it for this social media or other organization that I'm sharing this data with, right? So that lack of transparency is probably the biggest part of question when it comes to understanding those expectations. Any comments from you?
No, I fully agree. The transparency is key, right? And I was just thinking about WeChat. And you know, when they updated the new privacy laws in WeChat just recently, in the past, you believe that, okay, in WeChat, maybe the Chinese government have access to the data. Now you actually say yes, that the Chinese government will get the data. So it's a super difficult question, but I think we all, as an individual, back to the reality of our privacy laws. When we go online, are they readable? If you ask me about ours, really, I don't know, to be totally transparent, but I need to go back and look into this. I think we all expect that the data from the social media and so on are all over the place, but we play a key role ourselves. Like I said before, back to the human firewall, and what we do as human beings, as individuals in the company, are super important, because if you don't get that one right, either as an individual or as a company, then we will keep having the challenge and mistrust, potentially.
You first.
Yeah, for me, the debate, I think, is more on how those social media companies could moderate the debate we have online. Because I think today we all agree that they have the data, they use it, and they're super good at it. And I think now there is nothing that could prevent them to continue on that side. But I think what is my biggest concern is that today we see how the algorithm they use actually go and make the people who speak the most on the social media a higher voice in the society, meaning that I watch, I don't remember, but it's like you watch the video on YouTube, then they suggest you a second one, a third one, and the fourth one is really violent content or haters or. And I think the social media here could be regulated more. And now today they try to. There's this huge debate: do they have to monitor what's online or not? But I think this is where they can still have an impact, not on the data capture and what they do with the data, but more on how they can make their algorithm evolve, actually.
And the other aspect that was mentioned was data sovereignty. Can we enable our clients to have sovereignty over their data? Can they look into our algorithms? Can they look into our programs? As mentioned, we provide electronic voting or propose electronic voting, and we've put the whole code, 150,000 lines of code, into the internet for everyone to look at. That's the program. That's how it works. You can install it. You can run it on your PC. You can tell us if there is an error. It's yours, because at the end of the day, that's our democracy. And we need to, we need to own it ourselves as well.
I mean, just some personal observations here, because I think this is an area, a bit like we were talking about, well, whether government regulation has caught up or even just social norms have caught up with the pace of change. And if you think back to the original model of the internet before the financial crash, and it was all about creating things together and connecting and sharing, and people who gave information then would never have known in the future it might be used in this way. So that element of informed consent could be up for debate. It's also an area where everyone operates with an assumption that there's regulations and rules and you're protected as a consumer, but the expertise in this area is outside government. So it's hard to say, what should the consumer expect? I mean, I think people now have understood that if you're not paying for it, you're the product. But a lot of these exchanges happened some time ago when this would never have been imagined. So it's I wouldn't say the consumer is entirely at fault here.
This also reminds or brings in mind the concept of rather newly developing concept of corporate digital responsibility, right? We talk about social responsibility. Now we also started talking about corporate digital responsibility. We expect digital voting systems to be free of being messed around, right? Or we expect our food companies to ethically source their raw materials, for instance. If we're talking about digital or social media, if they are an information marketplace, should we or should we not also expect them to be careful about how they bring in certain information to further front line than the others, like you were saying, regarding the algorithms and how the algorithms work? So that's, I think, the ultimate question. Are there any other questions from the audience?
Yes, my name is Emric. I'm a student here at the Institute. I'm previously a student engineer at the EPFL in Lausanne. And you mentioned, Marie, the gap between regulation on safety on internet and reality. But is it an issue of speed? I mean, hackers will always be faster than lawmakers. How to bridge the gap? What can be the solution?
Yeah, you're right. The regulator is always behind, actually. But I think the regulator is also changing its mindset. There are a lot of working groups with companies, actually, and they try to be more practical because, I think the way we do the regulation today is really different from what we used to do, because the technology is, as we're mentioning, is too fast. So the regulator needs to understand what's happened actually actually, what we see today in the financial services is that the regulator have more budgets and they hire also more talents. So now they also have their data science team.
So you mean you are hiring hackers, former hackers?
Yeah, actually, we see that from governance agency. They also have their own hiring process. But I think also from a regulation perspective, I think on the data side, for instance, what they do today, so it's not cyber side, but it's on the regulation side. They hire their own data science team. And they cross-check all the reports the bank send, and they say, okay, you just disclose that your asset management are under that level, but we see that your competitors with the same quite the same book of clients, when we cross their data in the same geography, maybe are you sure this is the right number? And then they have those auditors coming. And so I think today they also try to hire talents, but for sure the real issue is the money, actually. Can we afford to have the talents and also on the cyber part? And that's why we see also that a lot of leakage today, and the loss of data and targets now are public sector, like hospital, like town city, because today this is where you have less budget to protect yourself. So I think it's a huge issue, and how to get the talents there.
Should you work with ethical hackers? Yes, definitely. That's what we do, and it pays out.
Fully agree.
Another question from online, from Hussein Dogan. How do the panelists see the role of the public sector in establishing digital trust between their respective companies, institutions, and their customers?
I think there's a couple of things here. The public-private partnership is important. It's important to create also the trust between the governmental institution and have this public-private partnership, because at the end of the day, either you are protecting as a government the infrastructure of a country, or you are protecting the assets of a bank or a luxury industry. We have the same goal, right? So we are not in competition. How I see it as we are in a situation where we need to support and help each other, and we need to exchange valid information. And there are, let's say, bodies also here in Switzerland where you can get certified, so you can actually exchange those type of information. So I see the public-private partnership as key for everyone, not only the governments, but also for the industry, for the companies to be part of this, to exchange, because otherwise we will be behind all the time. We are behind still, but we will gain more speed and also more knowledge to be more proactive in our approach when we're talking about the cyber security area.
Within the financial services, actually, we see a huge change. After the global financial crisis, actually, the regulator saw the bank are the major threat, and they were really in all the regulation. It was you need to apply that, you need to comply with that. But today, I think after a lot of improvements, they really work on how to have a strong partnership with the bank. And the latest regulation, especially on the ESG side, or they use the bank and the investment company as a leverage to make success in that area. And they say, okay, you're a big investment company, so you can make an impact on where you invest. So. And the same for the cyber side. They see that now the financial institutions are also a big target, and that behind the people are the target. So I think here we have a lot of improvements, and as I was mentioning before, a lot of really active working group where regulator and professional work closely together.
And of course, the elephant in the room is we companies also expect governments and law enforcement to go after criminals, and cyber criminals are just criminals. And we expect if we file a lawsuit of an attack against us or any customers, that this really gets followed up, and in essence, the culprits get caught get caught and brought to justice. And at the end of the day, it's just criminals against companies, right?
Yeah, not much further to add, but I think the experience in Gavi as a public-private partnership shows how the ideas and the experience that we get from the different groups that are engaged in our activities. It's certainly as something, like the cyber attacks, like the challenges on hacking have come up, that was identified and action was taken. It's very good that we have our private sector partners to advise on that, and fully agree that if we translate this into, if it's a crime, the government provides rule of law, and that's what enables their businesses to thrive, citizens to thrive, then it has to be followed up.
The only thing that I can add is that we do see more and more public-private partnerships in cybersecurity awareness creation as well, right? So you were talking about the lack of budget. There are a couple of, in Europe and also in combination US-Europe partnerships where these public-private partnerships do take the intention to create awareness or increase awareness in small and medium enterprises and also in citizen base when it comes to cyber risks as well. So there is indeed some movement, albeit within the specific domain of cybersecurity, towards bringing more help or more awareness to public on that.
And it's important to work together, all these circles of trust among security professionals, for example, that we have in Switzerland, but also in other countries. And internationally do help a lot because we can help each other out. We're faced with the same issues.
And to add to this, I think when we saw the last slide on Martin's presentation this morning, there was those guys around the table, the drawing, saying now we move into cybercrime. I think the reality of the fact is that if you look to the organized crime picture today, they are also hit financially by COVID, believe it or not. So that's the reason why we, for the last 6 to 9 months, have seen a high increase in different types of cyber attacks. If you dig a little bit into this, it comes from the organized crime organizations, which now has this very much in their toolbox. It also means that the public-private partnership and the sharing of information to actually fight this is important, and it's not something we can do on our own. So I think the risk picture as itself shows that this is super important and we need to do it.
Thank you. Maybe we do have time for one more question.
Thank you. I think it's on. My name is Pascal. I'm with the Foundation Economy of Trust. Maybe first with a question to Brenda, but the rest of the panelists welcome to, of course, join in. What are maybe some positive impact of digital and data, especially when it comes to the furthering of the SDG goals? I'm just curious, you mentioned public partnership, you're in public health, the explosion of data, the advent of AI and others. Can we maybe reflect also on some of the positive elements?
Thank you, and I think it's important to underline that it's an overwhelmingly positive story, the speed with which knowledge can travel around the world. I actually took part in a panel at the beginning of the pandemic that the Geneva Centre for Security Policy put on, where we were looking at the impact of the pandemic. And we had a speaker on education and just the fact that kids could continue to be educated because of the online and Zoom and what have you. And that this was actually meaning that more developing countries could look at the potential for expanding, attendance at universities or whatever. They have multiple online courses and whatever, but that's just one example of the speed with which progress can be made, that we don't have to look at what's physically available to a country and indeed an individual if they're in a country that is not a supportive environment. So I think the learning connection, being able to see the full picture, the SDGs in a way are a product of the digital world and the sharing of data and seeing how systems interconnect. So overwhelmingly, it's a positive story. And if we get sneaky phishing emails occasionally, we shouldn't forget that. Even just actually the impact on what people expect. That citizens in countries expect more from their governments and demand more because they can see and what's happening elsewhere. It's been amazing, sort of opening the lid on what people should expect. And yes, it's overwhelmingly positive. So thanks for making that point.
I will have is it on? Yes. I will have maybe a more rejoiceful thinking. I'm Cécile May from Megaverse.
We are a young startup active in adaptive learning in cyber awareness. And I wanted to ask you about innovation, because we said that the law is, in back of whatever is the creativity of the hackers, and innovation could be a solution to come in front of all this new threat and cybercrime. And we've been supported, and we are supported by most of you in the panel, and I thank you for that. And I would like to ask you, what's your idea, or what's your concrete step towards innovation? How do you do that to solve the problem?
If I may start, innovation can give us a lever to change the playing field. If we are against hackers, for example, maybe we can innovation can help us change the playing field and move the topic to another level where we have an advantage. I mentioned the bug bounty program. That came out of an invention. That came out of a novel way of thinking of attacking the problem. So absolutely, yes. I've experienced innovation as a game changer, definitely.
Agree, actually, and innovation through an ecosystem and startups, actually, because we have our core business, and security is an enabler of what we do, but we are not specialists, and it's super important to have an ecosystem of specialists of that. So innovation is the key for sure.
No, I fully agree with you. Innovation is really important, and you can always raise the question. If you look into your portal in your company, and you go to a training, learning, and development platform, and you will see there is thousands, maybe not thousands, but there's a lot of training and learning and development things you can do, and you need to do. Some are mandatory. But where do you find the time, and where do you find the right one, which gives the 4 points that is important for the person, motivating, actually making sure that we do a difference and so on, because you can only remember 4 points, right? So the innovation part and the training, learning and development, how we can turn this into be a positive, that's really interesting. So thank you.
Okay, I do see that we are coming towards the end of our time. So maybe let me ask if our panelists have their final comments. Would you like to close with a brief statement? Anything else to add? Okay. Maybe at the closing word, I think the COVID changed the situation a lot. Actually, I like to participate in panels and share with other industries, actually. And 3 years ago, we were talking a lot about innovation, a lot about what we could do through AI, what we could do through the data. Data is a new oil. How can we leverage that? And after the COVID, trust is the trend, actually. And I receive a lot of invitation, and I see the other discussion. Everyone talk about trust. So I think this is interesting to see how the EPFL took the topic early on that, and Switzerland as well. So because it's coming today, and I think now it's important to have a little bit advance on the topic, not to discover it now.
Yeah, to add on this, a few takeaways here will be that, as I see it, the human factor of this, as I call it, the human firewall, the interaction, not only from a digital perspective, but also from a physical perspective, the social engagement is important to keep up the trust level. But as I said, the human firewall inside the company we actually have trust in our own employees and the people working for us every single day. And we give them the opportunity to do innovation and actually grow and come up with new ideas which are outside the box. So we can actually change the game, as mentioned by Marcel. And Then again, another key takeaway from my side is the transparency towards our clients. If we have challenges coming up, saying, okay, be transparent, tell the story as it is, and try to learn from it, and not hopefully do the same mistake again. But that would be the key takeaways. And the use of big data, that's the last one. The use of big data in a positive way to help and support us going in the right direction to protect our people and our assets and our companies, and predict.
I'm happy with this closing statement.
Well, I was just going to say, it's so nice to be in a physical room with physical people, talking to people I can look at. But I think, you know, in terms of certainly what we've learned over the last year and a half about the digital world, despite all of these challenges that we've highlighted, it's incredible what has been done. I mean, I think it's important that we learn, and it's almost like we had a major stress test of all our systems. There's so much to learn from what did work and what didn't work over the last year and a half. And you know, I think it'd be important that we learn to maintain trust and in all of our different endeavours going forward. But I'll just tell you a story. This week I went out for drinks. We had a physical retreat with all the people who'd been working on the COVAX facility, and we hadn't met each other before. And it was incredible to just think what had been done. And this, you know, talking about innovation, the technology around mRNA, you know, being able to bring that to market so that it was affordable for the poorest countries in the world, and the ways in which we'd all had to work. So just incredible. And then, you know, when we met each other, all anyone was saying was, "Oh, I didn't know you were that tall. Oh, you're much smaller than I thought." But it was sort of, you know, just what we can do. But it was really good to actually operate in a physical world as well as a digital world. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda, and thank you all of you for being here, for sharing your expertise and your organization's specific take on trust and what it means to, you know, carry that over to digital trust.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Öykü, for managing this session and moderating it. Thanks to all the speakers. Thanks to everybody in the room and online for attending this morning. I think there was quite a lot of interaction, and that was much appreciated.